This is the video for section 5.5 part 1. And the first types of problem that we're going to have, we'll be learning how to factor the sum and the difference of two cubes. So first of all, let's kind of refresh what cubes are. 8, okay? 8 is a number that is being cubed, or that was cubed, because it's 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 cubed is 8. Another one would be 27, because it's 3 times 3 times 3, so that's 3 cubed. X cubed is x times x times x. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to factor the sum or difference of cubes by using these basic formulas. Okay, so I know this is our first example, but I'm going to put in another example, and we're going to factor this x cubed minus 8. So first of all, I'm going to check and see, is this the difference of cubes? I know it's the difference because of the subtraction. And then I'm going to check each term and say, is this something that's being cubed? Well, x is something being cubed. It's x. And 8 is something being cubed. It's 2. So I'm going to write down my a is x, my b is 2. Because I want to make it look like this. Okay? So this is actually a cubed minus b cubed. And I'm using this formula. And now I know what my a and b are. So now I'm going to plug these numbers into this formula. Excuse me. So it says a minus b. So x minus 2. Then it says a squared. So my a was x, so x squared. Plus a times b. So 2 times x is 2x. Plus b squared, and so 2 squared would be 4. And that's how I would factor x cubed minus 8. All right. So let's do this one. 16x to the 4th plus 54xy to the 3rd. So first of all, I'm always going to see if I can factor something out first. I know these are both even numbers, so I know I can factor out a 2. And they each have an x in common. So I'm going to write down in parentheses what I would have left. I would have 8x to the 3rd plus 54 divided by 2, what is it, 27? Y to the 3rd. And now in today's assignment, I need to always check and see what I have left in my parentheses to see if it can be factored even more. Well, this is the sum of two cubes because 8x squared, that's 2x times 2x times 2x. That's what my a is. 27, we said over here, was 3 cubed. So this is going to be, my b is 3y. So you see that my 8x to the 3rd is actually 2x cubed, and 27y to the 3rd is actually 3y quantity cubed. So I have my 2x out here in front, and now I need to follow this general case. So it says a plus b. Well, my a is 2x, my b is 3y. Then it says a squared. So a squared, so 2x times 2x is 4x squared, minus a times b, so minus 2x times 3y would give me 6xy, plus b squared, so plus 3y times 3y, 9y squared. And that's my answer. Okay. So let's look at the second one. I want to factor 8y cubed plus 5x cubed. So first of all, I need to check, is this the sum of two cubes? Well, this is, that's 2y cubed, but 5 is not something being cubed. So this is not the sum of two cubes, so this is prime. I cannot factor this. Okay, so let's do another example. 5y to the 4th minus 320yz to the 3rd. So first of all, I know I can factor out a 5, and I can factor out a y. So when I factor a 5y out, I have y to the third minus 320 divided by 5 is what, 64? Z to the third. So I have to check and see, is this the difference of two cubes? Well, and if it is, I'm going to write down my a and b. So that would be y cubed. My b, is there a number times itself 3 times, that'll give me 64. Well, it's 4 times 4 times 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. So this would be 4z being cubed. So I have 5y. And now I'm going to take this a and this b and plug it into this formula. I know it's this one because of the minus. So it says a minus b. So y minus 4z. Then it says a squared. So y squared plus a times b. So 4 times yz plus, take my b and square it. So 16z squared. And that's my answer. Okay. Let's factor this one. So first of all, I can factor out a negative 2, and I'm going to do a negative because they're both minus w. When I factor that out, I have 27w cubed plus 125z to the third. So let's see if this is the difference of cubes. What would my a be? Well, this would be 3w times 3w times 3w. My b right here, what number times itself will give me 125? Whenever I multiply it times itself 3 times, would be 5, because 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. Z. So I'm going to take this a and this b and plug it into this top formula, because look, it's plus now, so it's the sum of two cubes. So I have negative 2w, and it says a plus b, so 3w plus 5z, a squared. So when I square a, I get 9w squared minus a times b, so 3w times 5z is 15wz plus b squared. When I take my b and square it, that's 25z squared. And that's our answer. Okay. So I know you have more problems on your sheet. I'm looking to see. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the next part. The next part, this gives you a little table basically on a strategy in order to factor something. So if you have two terms, you need to check and see, is it the difference of two squares, is it the sum of two cubes, or difference of two cubes? And here's the formulas that you would use. If you have three terms, then we can use our box to factor that. If you have four or more terms, we have to group them together. So the next types of problems that we're going to have are four or more terms, and we're going to solve or factor these by grouping. So in this problem, factor each polynomial if the polynomial cannot be factored right prime. So the first thing I always check and see, look at all my numbers. Is there something I can factor out of every single one of these terms? Do all of them have something in common? And unfortunately, they don't. I can't factor out a 3 out of all of them. I can't factor out a 4. So the very first thing I always do is I always try to group together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 terms. So I'm going to try to group together my first 3 terms and my last 3 terms. Now this won't always work, but that's where I always start. So I'm going to look at my first 3 terms and say, what can I factor out of just these 3? Well, I know I can factor out a 4, and they each have an x in common. So I'm going to factor out a 4x. Now I'm going to write down what I've left. If I factor out a 4, I'd have a 2 and I have an a left. Plus, if I factor out a 4 and this x, I would just have a b left. If I factor out a 4 and this x, I would just have a c left. Plus, now I'm going to do the same thing with this. I need to find out what can I factor out of each one of these terms. I can factor out a 3 and I can factor out a y. Okay, now I'm going to write down what I would have left. I know I would have a 2 and an a here. Here, if I factor out a 3y, I'm just left with a plus b. Here, if I factor out a 3y, I'm just left with a c. Now, here's the deal. Whatever is left in my two sets of parentheses, they always have to match up. If they don't match up, then I know I need to regroup my problem separately. I need to regroup it again. Okay, so here's how we write our answer. Once I have these two things in common, what's on the outside of my parentheses, those go together in a set. And what's already in common goes together in a set, but I only write it one time. And that is my answer. That's how I factor this polynomial. And what's weird is if I FOILed this out, okay, and FOILed my 3y combined like terms, I would get my original problem back. All right, so let's do another one like that. Okay, let's do, I'm going to skip this one for right now. I'm going to come back to it, but let's do 2a. So on 2a, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to group together my first 3 and my last 3. So looking at my first 3, I know I can factor out a 6. They all have a 6 in common, and they all have an x in common. So I'm going to write down what I would have left. I would have a 5a minus 4b plus c. Okay, minus. Now, what can I factor out of each one of these? There's not any numbers that they all have in common, but they each have a y squared. Okay, so if I take a y squared out of this, I would have 5a. If I take out a y squared here, I would have a 4b, but I'm taking out a negative. So that changes the sign to negative y, whoops, negative. If I factor out that y, I have a 4b left. And if I factor out that y squared from the c, I have a positive, because I'm factoring out that negative, c left. Now here's the deal. What's inside the parentheses have to match up, and they do. So I write my answer as 6x minus y squared, 5a minus 4b plus c. Okay, now let's go back and do the problem that we skipped, which was 1b. All right, the reason I skipped this one is because when I group together my first 3 and my last 3, it's not going to work. Okay, so let me show you. The numbers that they would have in common, there's not a number. I would have to factor out, they don't have anything in common. Do you see that? I can't factor out a number, and they each don't have a variable I can factor out. Same thing with this side. I could factor out a 2, but I couldn't factor out any variables. So that pretty much tells me when I can't factor anything out of this first set, that I need to regroup them. Okay, so you just kind of have to play around with it. There's no easy way to figure out what goes together. I'm going to group together my 20th FY, so I group together this one, my 15 GY, and my negative 10 HY. Plus, now I'm going to group together what I have left. Negative 16 FZ plus 8HZ minus 12GZ. All right, so looking at my first set, I know I can factor out a 5, and they each have a y I can factor out. So when I factor out a 5, I have a 4f plus 3g minus, factor out a 5 here, 2h. Okay, now I'm going to factor out, what can I factor out here? A 4, and I'm going to factor out a negative 4 because of this negative right here. So I'm going to factor out negative 4, and they each have a z in common. So when I take out this negative, that leaves me with a 4f. That's good. Those match up. When I factor out a negative 4 here, that leaves me with a negative 2h, which is good. It's right there. It's just in a different order. And then my 12, that would factor out negative 4. That would give me plus 3g. And that's good because I have it here. Right, so I have the same thing in my set, they're just in a different order. So when I write down my answer, 5y minus 4z, 4f plus 3g minus 2h. And then the last one, on 2b, it doesn't matter how we group together. This is going to be prime. I'll never have anything in common in each set. Okay? So your assignment, just in case we're not in school, is going to be on page 346. And we're going to do 1 through 10, and then 21 through 29 odd. Okay, so that's your assignment for that page. Page 346, 1 through 10, 21 through 29 odd.